everyone, welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be talking about, again, the likelihood of who will be Joe Biden's choice for his vice presidential running mate in the 2020 presidential general election. Now, it started out with a very, very, very long list, including people like Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar, Susan Rice, but is now narrowed down to just the 6 women who you see here. Now, Joe Biden has promised that his running mate is going to be female. The first time that this has happened since 1984, when former Vice President Walter Mondale chose New York Congresswoman Geraldine Ferraro to be his running mate. So from top left to bottom right, we've got Elizabeth Warren, Senator from Massachusetts, California Senator Kamala Harris, former Ambassador Susan Rice, Representative from Florida Val Demmings. In the middle, on the bottom here, we got Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, and over here on the bottom right, we've got New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. Now, all of these candidates so far, as much has been leaked to the media, are undergoing the second round of vetting to be Joe Biden's running mate, and they all bring their particular strengths and weaknesses to the table. First of all, Val Demmings, a congresswoman from Florida, could help Joe Biden in that crucial state. It's 29 electoral votes. If she could put those into play, would solidify Biden's lead in the Electoral College. And if Biden could win Florida, could ensure that Biden can, in effect, disregard the states of Ohio and Arizona, which together make up 29 electoral votes, if she could deliver Florida to the ticket. Elizabeth Warren is arguably the most palatable amongst Bernie Sanders supporters. She was the majority of Sanders supporters' second choice in the Democratic presidential primary. She is known for her fundraising prowess. She is a go-to liberal leader in economics. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was the brainchild of Senator Elizabeth Warren. And she plays the best with Latino voters, which is a group that Biden struggled to court in the Democratic nominating process. California Senator Kamala Harris, while her home state is safely Democratic, she was a major contender in the 2020 Democratic primary, and would help solidify Biden's lead amongst African American voters. She, however, is not quite palatable to Bernie Sanders supporters, who look to her record as California State Attorney General, where during that time she denied hormone treatment to a transgender inmate, and for being notoriously strict on the policing of marijuana. So she is not a favorite amongst Sanders supporters. Former Ambassador Susan Rice does not have a very long partisan record with either side of the Democratic Party schism between progressives and moderates like Joe Biden. She would be the personification of the so-called do no harm, that is considered the cardinal rule of picking a vice presidential candidate. She, as she does not have a particularly long history with either side of the party, she could be a choice that doesn't really help or hurt Biden with Sanders supporters. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms is among these candidates arguably the least well known. However, she has been a very loyal Biden surrogate for a very long time, and she is the Biden campaign's go-to surrogate on issues of race relations and racial equality, which helps her which helps her case. She could also put Georgia into play if she's able to ensure turnout in Atlanta suburbs. Atlanta, she's the mayor of Atlanta. She could put Georgia into play. The other candidate that would be something of a Georgia play would be Stacey Abrams, who former minority leader of the Georgia State House, and candidate for governor in in 2018, governor of Georgia. Those two would be plays for Georgia. And finally, we have Michelle Lujan Grisham, who would be much like Elizabeth Warren, an olive branch to Latino voters that Biden had a hard time courting in the 2020 primary. She's also considered a very effective manager. New Mexico is one of the states that that very effectively flattened their curve when it came to the coronavirus. And she, much like Susan Rice, doesn't really have a long history with either side of the Democratic Party schism. So that is the argument for Michelle Lujan Grisham. Now let's look at just the raw numbers. Who are the majority of Democrats supporting in this vice presidential nomination debacle? And of those, according to a poll taken at the end of April and in early May, 36% of Democratic voters said that they would support Elizabeth Warren, that Biden should consider Elizabeth Warren. 19% said Kamala Harris. 14% said Stacey Abrams. However, according to knowledge that we have now, it does not appear as though Stacey Abrams has made it to the second round of vetting, despite the fact that she has made a very public push for the position. 13% said Amy Klobuchar, who has recently come under fire for during her time as Hennepin County District Attorney. She did not prosecute the officer who killed George Floyd, and also she has also not made it to the second round of vetting. Followed by Susan Rice at 4% and Val Demmings at 3%. Keisha Lance Bottoms did not even make it onto this list. There's Michelle Lujan Grisham at 1%. Now, who would add the most to the Biden campaign? Last week, I said that arguably it would be Elizabeth Warren. However, back then, it appeared as though the race for vice president was between Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, and Amy Klobuchar. According to a Morning Consult poll, all three of those were the only candidates for Vice President Biden's running mate that would bring a net gain to Biden's overall coalition. However, Val Demmings made a name for herself in during the impeachment trial of Donald Trump. She was one of the House impeachment managers that was sent to the Senate, and as a former police chief, during this time when there is a wide scale reimagining of how the police force should function, she would be a very strong she would be a very strong advocate for the Biden campaign on account of race relations, which is an issue where Biden is having trouble courting Bernie Sanders supporters due to the fact that his campaign recently released a plan to increase funding to the police force by $300 million. Now, she could help assuage disaffected Bernie Sanders supporters, as she has made herself something of a household name. She has a lot of authority when it comes to issues of policing, and she could overall, much like Susan Rice and Michelle Lujan Grisham, do no harm, whilst also bringing a certain level of gravitas to the ticket on an issue that is quickly becoming one of the defining ones in 2020. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms is another great choice, particularly if Biden hopes to compete in the state of Georgia. As she is a very loyal Biden surrogate, this does put her closer to the top of the list. However, her relatively low national profile does not bode well for her in the vice presidential nomination debate. Kamala Harris would be Kamala Harris, uh, as far as who has the chops to be a good vice presidential candidate, Kamala Harris is a terrific choice. She is known for being a fiery debater, um, particularly when she took on Joe Biden for his opposition to uh, um, to integrated busing when he was in the United States Senate. That plays well for Kamala Harris. However, she is unpalatable of um, to a number of Bernie Sanders supporters who see her as tough on crime, and she would do little uh, to um, to bring Latino voters into the Biden camp, which is going to be necessary if Biden is going to hope to compete in states like Arizona and Florida. Now, while according to this CNN ranks Kamala Harris as the best choice for for Biden's VP, Elizabeth Warren at third, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms at fifth, and Val Demmings at at seventh. Slowly, the Democratic Party base has begun to rally around Val Demmings. She is a new kind of vice presidential candidate in a time where the vice presidential candidate is going to really matter. Now more than ever, there is no guarantees that there is going to be an actual Democratic convention, as there was going to be due to the coronavirus pandemic. It could be a much more watered down event, which could do which might not do much to help Biden in the polls, as conventions are expected to do. They're expected to be a time when the party begins to rally around their candidate. Um, there's no guarantees that there's going to be a debate that there's going to be debates between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Um, and because of that, the vice presidential candidate is going to receive a lot of headway in the mainstream news. And for that reason, Val Demings, as she has continued to make herself a household name, as she would be someone who could bring credibility and gravitas to the ticket when it comes to issues of policing, as that continues to to uh, uh, to pick up profile in the national discussion. Val Demings is arguably Biden's best choice for vice president. She would bring the most people in. She would bring a sense of sobriety to the ticket that would counter Joe Biden's more jovial appeal, and her prosecutorial chops that were demonstrated in the impeachment trial to uh, would do a lot to speaks a lot to her campaigning ability. And so for that reason, despite the fact that last week I said that Elizabeth Warren would do the most for Joe Biden, Val Demings appears to be Biden's best choice for vice president. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please feel free to leave a like, leave a comment. Tell me what I could be doing better. Tell me what you want to hear more about, and I will see you all in the next video. Thank you guys so much for watching.